All right, we're recording. And here we are on lesson 9 in our booklet. So as I just explained to the people who were here early, we'll skip 7 and 8, or the second half of 7 and 8 until the end. We'll do those last. I want to get this one kind of out of the way because it's the most work. So it'll give you the most days to kind of work on the assignments. Lesson 8 doesn't even have an assignment. So lessons 9 and 10 is where kind of the last kind of big idea of home finance is. And the topic is, like I was saying, a topic near and dear to my heart. Property taxes. I don't get paid if not for property taxes. So of course this one's going to be my favorite right here. All right. First of all, we're going to break down what taxes kind of, how they're collected. First of all, municipal means the town or the area you live in, right? So your local neighborhood is your municipality, and municipal taxes are collected by the local municipal government. They tax residential properties. Now, residential means where people live. Commercial properties, that means properties where people do their businesses and stores and stuff like that, shopping centers. And of course, businesses and farms. If you have an office building, you run a farm, everybody pays taxes here. All of these guys pay taxes. Now, to determine how much property tax a town or an area wants to actually collect in the first place, you have to determine what your budget is. Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on. Right. You have to determine what your budget is, right? So, what does the municipality need money for in the first place? Why bother collecting taxes in the first place? Well, your municipal operating budget pays for two main things. Infrastructure, that's infra, I-N-F-R-A, and structure. Infrastructure and services. Okay, what do these things mean? There's room up here. I'm gonna move up to here. What does infrastructure mean? What is the infrastructure of the town or the neighborhood you live in? Well, that would be things like roads, bridges, sidewalks, bike paths. Let's see, what else? Oh, sewer lines. Water lines. Natural gas lines don't count in here because the natural gas company pays for those themselves. Let's see, what else? Parks, playgrounds. Okay, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. I'm kind of exhausted in ideas here, but I'm going to put a couple dots because I bet there's more. Your property tax dollars have to pay to fix and maintain all those things, and of course in a newer neighborhood to build them and put them in the first place. So that's your infrastructure. Services. What are the services that your municipality provides for you? Well, how about, for example, public transportation? You might think, well, when I get on the bus, I have to pay to get on the bus. Doesn't that cover the cost of my bus ride? Not even close. Property taxes pay for more of it than the actual fee to ride the bus does. Libraries are a public service that are paid for by your property tax dollars. Community centers. And then, of course, your more essential services, police, fire departments. You might be thinking, well, what about the ambulances? Nope, that's provincial. That comes under the health. That comes out of income taxes. So there we go. So now, a town has to sit down and say, okay, we'll make a budget. All of these things are the things we have to pay for. Then they have to figure out how much taxable property they have in their town that they have to assess. Now, when you pay for property taxes, do they base how much you pay for on the entire value of your property? And the answer is no. They only base it on a portion. That's why they call your tax assessment a portioned assessment. It's a percentage or a portion of your home's value that they base their assessment on. Okay, so portioned assessment is a percentage or portion of a home's value that is taxable. There's a little formula here. The portioned assessment is generally the market value of the home times the portioned percentage. Usually, in most towns, it's 45%. In smaller communities, it can be less than that, and you could probably understand why it'd be less than that in smaller communities. Smaller communities wouldn't have as much of the things up here to pay for as larger towns and cities have. But 45% tends to be where it is for most of us. There's a land portioned assessment and a building portioned assessment that are calculated separately. So in other words, they figure out a number based on how much your property's worth, and they figure out a number based on how much the buildings and houses and garages and whatever else you have on your property are worth. Okay, first piece of math. Joe Kerr owns a single-family residential house in Thompson, Manitoba. The market value assessment of the land is $6,900, and the building that's on the land is $67,900. Determine Joe's portioned assessment if the portion percentage for single-family homes in Thompson is 45%. So here's how we're going to do this. First of all, we're going to find our total assessed value. So we'll take the two different numbers, the one for the land and the one for the building, and we'll add them together. So $6,900 for the land and $67,900 for the building. That's going to give us a total value of his property of $74,800. So his portioned assessment's 45%. So his portioned assessment will be 45% of $74,800. And remember how to do a calculation like that? What do you do with a percent? You change it to a decimal. And what do you do with of in math? You change it to a multiply. And then we actually punch buttons on that, and $33,660. So what does the portioned assessment mean? It's the percentage of the home, or I should say and or property value that is being taxed. So it's not, you don't pay tax on 100%, you pay of your property's value, you pay 45%. You pay on 45% of your property's value. Okay, so I'm gonna move this over here. Okay, so there we go. So there's our first example. And all that gets us is just what the value of the house is. That's when you get your property tax assessment in the mail, this is the number you're seeing. You're seeing that number that is, okay, we think your property and the building on it is worth this much money, and you are going to pay tax on 45% of that, and here's that number. Now, how do they actually calculate what the actual tax is? Well, it depends on the rate at which you're being taxed. You're being taxed on $33,660 worth of property if you're Joe Kerr. Now we got to figure out the property tax rate. And the technical name for this, you've probably seen this if you've ever noticed a newspaper article about property taxes. The technical term for it is it's called the mill rate. The rate of tax per every $1,000 of the relevant part of a home's value calculated by the municipality. So, the mill rate for a municipality is the total revenue required divided by the total portioned assessment, which means all of the portioned assessments of all the properties in their municipality, times by 1,000. So another way to say it is 1 mil represents $1 of taxes for every $1,000 of assessed value that the property might have in that town. So here's an example. So let's say that you have a municipality that needs an operating budget of $5 million. They've done all the calculations to fix all the roads, to mow the lawn in all the parks, to run all the rec centers, to pay all the library and police and fire department employees. $5 million. So this is obviously a small municipality, but you get the idea. It's $5 million. The total portioned assessment of all the properties, if you add up all of these calculations for every single property in the municipality, you get $252 million. So what is the property tax rate? So the mill rate is, and let's just use that formula there, the total revenue required. I require $5 million to run this town. The total value of all of the assessed property in the town that people own is $252 million. And we're going to take that, we're going to divide it and times it by 1,000. So, I got good news for you. Notice that the zeros can cancel. You can cancel these 3 zeros, those 3 zeros. You can actually simplify this down to 5 divided by 252 times 1,000. And when you do that, you get 19.84. Now, that's not money. That's not, I mean, it is and it isn't. It's not dollars. It's dollars per every $1,000 of property. We actually call it mils. It's 19.84 mils. So let's go back to example 1. In example 1, Joe Kerr had an assessment or a portioned assessment of $33,660. Are you okay if I just say PA instead of portioned assessment? Getting tired of spelling words already and we're only 10 minutes in. So Joe Kerr had $33,660 of portion assessment. Again, his property is not worth that little. He's worth way more than that if he wants to sell it. But for tax purposes, that's all they're going to tax him on, is $33,660. So $33,660 of portioned assessment, and the mill rate is 19.84. So for every $1,000 he owns, he pays $19.84. So I have to divide how much he is being taxed that he owns, divided by 1,000, and times it by 19.84. Okay, I've already done the calculation on this. That is a property tax bill for the municipality of $667.81. Okay, so there we go. So that's how the town figures out, or the municipality figures out how much the property taxes are, and that's how they get applied to your property. They're based on something called a mill rate. And that mill rate just means for every $1,000 you own, this is how many dollars you pay. Now, that's only one of the types of taxes that you have. The municipality is not the only ones that collect property taxes. Take a look. Okay, so let's move on to lesson 9 here. We just did this one, municipal taxes. So we did that in lesson 9. We also have, again, this is the one nearest and dearest to my heart, education taxes. And municipal taxes are collected by your municipality, right? The local town or the neighborhood that you live in. Educational taxes are collected provincially and by your local school division. So there's actually two types of education taxes. Actually, your municipal taxes, what we did in Lesson 9 is actually right here, the General Municipal Tax. There is also, say for example, there's a project that won't take very long, like a project that we have to improve a specific road this year, we have to build a new park this year. We call that a local improvement tax, and that will change from year to year. Some years you might not even have one. This one's calculated differently, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. So really, your property taxes kind of have four different categories to them. The one we looked at in Lesson 9, General Municipal Tax, based on your portioned assessment. Your local improvement tax, which again might not even be there if they're not doing any major projects in your neighborhood. Your provincial education tax, and your school division education tax. Now, this one we saw in Lesson 8 how to calculate. Take your total portioned assessment, divide by 1,000, and times it by the mill rate. And that's for the general municipal tax, and the education tax works the same way. Actually, the school division tax works the same way too. They should have put that in there too. This one, local improvement, works differently. It depends on how much, they base it on how much frontage your property has. In other words, how many feet long is the front of your property? That's what they base it on. And then times how much it's going to cost to do this project per foot. So for example, let's put it all together. Andre and Denise Johnson own a house with a total portioned assessment of $48,500. The frontage on their home is 50 feet. Their annual municipal tax rate is 23.435 mils. Their property taxes include a local improvement tax for both boulevard construction at $3.60 per foot. The Johnson's provincial education tax is 7.312 mils, and the school division rate is 23.614 mils. There is a homeowner's credit of $700. So that would be the government deciding that they would like to give back some of the taxes people pay because perhaps they had they over budgeted the year before, so people are getting some of that money back. That's usually what happens when you get a homeowner's credit. Actually, that's happening. We did vehicle insurance, right, and Manitoba Public Insurance last chapter. I just the other day got back my my rebate, my credit from my insurance, because I guess the one silver lining of the pandemic is I guess there were a lot less accidents than they had budgeted for last year because there's less people driving, I assume. So so they did not have to take as much money from us for to cover insurance as they thought they would. So I got a nice little couple $100 of rebate back. It was very nice. Okay, so anyway, let's calculate the total property bill. Okay, so let's start with the one that we just talked about, local improvement. Let's do the local improvement first. Is there an E in improvement before the M-E-N-T? I think there is. Improvement, right? Where's the word improvement? Yes, there is. Okay. Local improvement tax. Okay, so basically, you take how long the front of your property is, 50 feet, and times it by the rate at which they're going to improve your neighborhood per foot, times $3.60 per foot. So 50 times $3.60 turns out to be $180. So that new boulevard construction is going to cost these people $180 that year. Next year, that might not be there. That's why it's kind of calculated separately, right? You build the boulevard, hopefully it lasts for the next 20 years. You don't have to fix it again. All right, next, the General Municipality Tax. Let's do that one next. So that one is, take how much I've been assessed for tax purposes. Remember, this number is really 45% of how much the house is actually worth. Divide it by 1,000 and times it by the mill rate for municipal taxes, which is right there, 23.435. So that's basically 48.5 times 23.435. And I've already done this math, and it turns out that this is $1,136.60. Okay, what's next? Next, let's see, we have, remember, two types of taxes for education. Let's do the provincial one first. So let's do the Provincial Education Tax. So once again, my house has been assessed at this much. You can tax up to this much of my house if I'm Andre or I'm Denise. So there we go. And now notice this one has its own mill rate. There we go. Provincial Education Tax mill rate is 7.312. So now I do this calculation, and I get $354.63. And then I got one more, the school division tax. So school division tax, once again, it's that same price of my house divided by 1,000. And this time, the mill rate for this one is 20. Notice that's the biggest one. Makes sense. The biggest part of your property taxes go to education. And that's going to be, I did the math on that, $11,045, or sorry, not $11,000, $1,145.28. So there we go. Add those four things up, and you get your property tax bill. Oh, wait, but don't forget, they got a rebate from last year's taxes. So minus $700 that they don't have to pay because they got credited from perhaps the over budgeting last year. So add those four numbers and subtract 700. I've already done that calculation for you. And you get $2,116.51. And that is your overall property tax bill. And that's how you calculate property taxes. Notice there's nothing particularly mathematically difficult about it. All I'm doing is multiplying and adding. Ooh, and I did one little subtract there. But for the most part, it's can you read the problem and figure out which number is which. It's more about reading than it is about calculating, to be honest. So now, when you get an actual statement from your municipality about how your taxes are about to be calculated, it's not usually sentences like this. It's usually something more like this, like a little chart. So let's do this one now for the chart. Oh, and this chart is actually missing something. We're going to assume that this is in a city where, again, it's 45% for the assessed value that they can tax it at. Okay, so we have, our city has assessed, they think my land is worth $25,900 even if it was empty, but I've got a building on it that is worth $82,500. So step one is to figure out what my portioned assessment is. So my portioned assessment is 45% of those two numbers. So it's 0.45, and then of those two numbers added together. I'll add them together in a bracket here. So there we go. Punch buttons. What do you get if you punch buttons on that? Add those two numbers up and times them by 45%. I am being taxed on $48,780 worth of my property. That's where we're at. Okay. Next. Let's do the local improvement tax first again. I kind of like that. Local imp. Okay, so what's my local improvement tax? Well, my local improvement tax is $3.60 per foot, and my frontage is 55 feet. So 55 times 3.60. And that's going to be $198. There's the local improvement tax. All right, next let's do the General Municipal Tax. General GMT. So my General Municipal Tax is, take how much I can be taxed on, divide it by 1,000, and times it by the General Municipal Tax mill rate, which is 23.435 mils. And when you do that, you get $1,143.16. Let's do the Provincial Education Tax. So once again, take how much my house can be taxed for, divide it by 1,000, and my Provincial Education Tax is 7.984 mils. All right, I already did this calculation, and I got $389.46. Next, let's find the School Division Tax, which is again this number. And the mill rate for the school division is always the big one, although it's not as big as the municipal one this time, but it's certainly bigger than the provincial one. And that's going to be $893.94. And, oh, this person has a credit too, $250 credit, which means calculate this tax, but subtract the fact that they get back $250 as an incentive to own a house in that neighborhood. So let's see. Add those four numbers and minus 250, and you get a property tax bill of $2,374.56. And that's pretty normal. I don't think there's very many people who own a house in certainly the Winnipeg area who pay less than between $1,500 and $2,500 for their property taxes. $2,000 is pretty average, I think. So there we go. That's lessons 9 and 10. And it's the last two lessons in the book. We'll go back, we'll finish lesson 7. Well, maybe we'll do it lesson 7 tomorrow, and then maybe give you a work period, and then we'll finish up lesson 8 on Thursday. That's a good plan, I think. Okay? So you've got all kinds of time now. Let me show you what the assignments are. Okay, first of all, let me remind that there's some people who still owe me some hand-ins. Let me go back to the blog. Blog. There we go. Okay, so there's still some people who owe me the mortgage hand-in, which I said I wanted by tomorrow. I started marking the last hand-in, the vehicle finance hand-in, over the weekend. I'll try to finish those tonight, and then I'll make that live on Edsby. I guess if there's anybody who still wants to try to finish the vehicle finance hand-in, if you can get it done today, I can still mark it. But once I make the marks live tomorrow, that's it. Game's over. You didn't get it done. Okay, if you're done the hand-ins, then, and you're done assignments 5, 6, and 7. Actually, when I say 7, now that I think about it, we only did half of assignment 7. Can you do all the questions in assignment 7 right now? Let me take a look at assignment 7. Actually, why don't I look here? Let's look here. Assignments. Is there anything on efficiency in assignment 7? That's assignment, oh, that's way back. That's assignment 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, yeah, you know what? Okay, hang on. I've decided I'm going to change my mind on this. We'll hang on. We'll assign assignment 7 later. I just realized I haven't finished all the examples in lesson 7 because I only did half of it with you. So let's change this to 5 and 6. So if you're still working on lessons 5 and 6 or assignments 5 and 6, work on that. We'll save lesson 7, or assignment 7, until later in the week. And if you're done all that stuff, you can start the assignment on what we talked about today. Property tax and mill rate and all that. The calculations work exactly the same as the examples we did. But there you go. You can have the rest of the class as work time. So I'm going to, let me see, hang on, I'm going to save this. Where's my save button? There we go, update. Oh, I guess I can stop the video now too.